Hey there, it's Jen and I'm excited to bring you another video for Altenew. I am the guest designer this month and I am excited because they sent me some fun new stuff to play with, but I also have had lots of stuff in my stash from Altenew that I've been meaning to put to good use that I haven't had a lot of time to play with, and so give me a good excuse to do that. So I'm going to make a card for this project and I am going to make it using these watercolor brush markers. It's a different medium for me, so I wasn't sure that I would know how to use it or what to do, but I feel like this card that I'm going to make today is a great technique to use with these kind of brushes especially. I think it's easier than doing it with a regular paintbrush possibly, so or at least you get more vibrant color. So I'm using those. I've got some white paint in a fine line bottle, which is fun, and then I've got a couple of stamp sets. I'm going to use the neighborhood stamp set, which I've used in a past video, which I'll link to at the end. But I'm just going to use this little house right here, and I'm going to use the hugs from the sentiment and quote stamp set. And basically what I'm wanting to do is kind of create a little winter scene. So I'm going to make this house into a little log cabin. So I've got my watercolor paper here. I've got some sticky notes, and these are the kind that are sticky on the whole thing. And I'm going to use that to mask things off. I'm also going to use some washi tape, and I'm going to tape this down to this. I don't have a nice board, so I have this really thick chipboard, but if you had a board, you could use that as well, and that's just going to help keep the watercolor paper flat while we paint. So I am going to get this taped down.
Okay, so I'm just using some washi tape to tape this down, and I kind of want a large white border on my piece, and so I am taping it so that it is just slightly less than the width of the washi tape, and the washi tape is about 1/2 inch, so I'm just leaving about not a quarter of an inch, like 1/8 of an inch off the sides, and then taping the rest. And then I taped off the bottom where I want kind of the horizon line to be, and I also put some post-it tape where I am going to, that's going to be the snow area, and I don't want anything to get in the way of the snow. After I put those post-its on, I remembered that I wanted to mask off my log cabin looking house, and if you noticed, I stamped that, but then I stamped it off a few times before I stamped it on the background, because really I just want a very, very light look for that house, because I'm going to paint over it, and I don't want to be able to see the lines of the stamp really. So what I'm doing here for the background is I got the entire background wet, and then I used my dusk paint pen or whatever, and I put a bunch of color at the top, and then I'm just taking a clean wet brush and brushing the bottom where the paint is falling, and it kind of drags the paint down. And then I added a little bit more of this lighter blue, and I'm just kind of blending it in and letting it drip a little bit, and I'm just kind of letting the paint do its work. The less you kind of touch this, the better it is. I kind of feel like I have a hard time not touching it, but I'm trying. So I'm just making sure that color goes down as far as I want it to, and then I'm taking a dry paper towel and I'm just dabbing in a few areas, dabbing off the color to make some clouds. And then I'm going to dry this with my heat gun. And I like the way that this looks. Remember, the trees are going to cover a lot of it, so it doesn't matter if it's exactly perfect or anything. And the less perfect it is, the better. So I'm using emerald and moss for my tree colors, and I just have a makeshift palette that I made out of a piece of white cardstock, and then there is a piece of like a page protector over the top of it, and I put a couple or a little bit of each color on the palette because I want to mix on the palette, just kind of grabbing, I'm starting with emerald, but I grabbed a little bit of the moss color on my brush before I started, and that will help give some variation in color as I'm working. So what I'm doing with the brush is I'm just kind of, I drew some tall lines, and I'm just kind of tapping it back and forth across that line to get some trees. And this is so easy to do. The final card may look somewhat complicated, but it's so easy. Just tap those trees back and forth. And start smaller at the top and get bigger at the bottom. You can leave some spaces sometimes, you know, where trees don't grow a little bit, like I just did on that tree. And I'm just kind of dipping my paint pen back and forth in the different colors to get some variation. And I kind of tried to make that tree look like it was bent over a little bit. I'm not getting... My trees look a little bit like a big blob in the end, just a little bit. I think they still look really pretty, but if I were to do this again, I might spread them out a tiny bit or something like that. Now, here's something I didn't anticipate, is that my tree, or the top of my cabin, got a little bit pink from that pink Post-it. So if you're using Post-its to mask, maybe don't use pink, because when the water got on it, it messed it up. So I grabbed my Altenew watercolor, my actual watercolors, because my watercolor pens don't have a brown in them and I didn't feel like trying to mix one. And so I'm just grabbing my watercolors and using the Altenew water brush that came with them, and I'm just drawing some lines on my house to make it look like a log cabin. And it's really simple to do. And then I'm drawing some, like I'm taking a bit of a darker color and I'm darkening up the lines around the roof and on the edge of the house, just to make it stand out a little bit more. And I also went around the window slightly. And then I'm adding some color inside the window with just some yellow. So I'm going to leave that there for now. And what I'm going to do is add some snow. So the way I'm going to add the snow is I have a little bit of white paint, and I'm just taking an old brush. This is just, it doesn't matter what kind of brush you use. I wanted to use one that I didn't really care about. And I'm just dabbing on white paint. Now, because the watercolor, the paint markers, they're reactivated by water and by wet things, it kind of, when I dab this on, it picks up the green a little bit, which I actually like because it doesn't make it too super white and it kind of looks a little bit more natural. So I'm going over it once with the paint like this, and you can see it's kind of just giving it some texture and some dimension. And then I'm going back in with my paint pen just a little bit to add in some dark areas. And then I'm going to also go over the top of my house with this white paint. And I'm trying to get a little bit of a snowy look on the roof. And then I'm going in with the paint directly in the bottle, and I'm kind of making some little shelves of snow. And this is going to give it a little bit of a whiter look, but it also, it does blend in just a little bit. So I think it still looks pretty natural, but I really love the way that it looks when I I'm just adding random little lines of paint. And you just kind of have to play around with your paint bottle. I kind of just got a feel for how much would come out when I squeezed it. And I also used it to help me draw more detailed lines on top of the roof of the house, as you saw. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take some water on my acrylic block and just some of that paint and just kind of flick it on. And I learned this trick from Christina Werner, and that's going to be some snow for me. I really like the way that ends up looking, and I'm going to do a little bit more. I'm drying that with my heat gun because I want to add some more, but I want it to be dry first. So I'm just impatiently drying that up with my Ranger heat gun. Sorry for the focus going in and out. Now I'm going to flick on a little bit more snow. And I kind of love how magical that's looking. I love that blue dusk color. It's such a pretty color. And I'm going to add a little bit more snow. So you can see it kind of faded back into it. And now I'm just going to go in and add a third layer. And that way, this is where I'm going to get kind of my little highlights. So I'm not doing quite as much. But I really love the way this looks. And it's so easy to do with this little paint. The paint in the fine line bottle is so fun. So again, drying that up, and you'll see it kind of fade back a little bit, which is great. And I wanted to put a little bit of snow kind of on the ledge of the window. And then I'm going to start peeling off my tape. Oh, I remembered I wanted to keep the side on because here's what I'm going to do now. so there's a nice crisp, clean line at that horizon. I don't want it to be quite that crisp. So I just took off that horizon line washi tape, and now I am going in with my log cabin color, and I'm going to go in with some of this green color, and I'm going to just bring that line down just a little bit so it's not quite such a straight line. And I'm also using the gray, I will be using the gray pen or marker, I think I do, or the gray paint pen to bring in a little bit of shadowing. And I'm adding some white to the bottom of those trees where I just brought them in. I also brought in some more paint with my little tube of paint there, and I especially kind of piled some up right below the cabin. And then I'm just using my brush to kind of brush it out so that it blends into the bottom of the painting. So really simple. And now instead of that straight horizon line, it just looks a little bumpy, like it might be snow. And I really love the way that looks. So here I'm just going back in and adding some darker details, just a couple of little things here and there that I felt like I wanted to touch up a little bit. And again, heating it, because after this I'm going to put my sentiment on, and I don't want the painting to be wet at all. When I put on my sentiment, I don't want to be smudging it with my wrist or anything like that while I'm doing it, because I don't want to ruin it. This took me a while to paint. Not too long. I mean, it went fairly fast, as you can see. I mean, this is sped up, but still it didn't take that long. And now I am ready to peel off the rest of my tape. Now, if you get any paint or any little marks anywhere, I love that mono sand eraser from Tombow. It just kind of takes off the first layer of paper, and you can fix up any little mistakes that you've made. So I'm going to use that Hugs sentiment, and what I want to do is have my title be Winter Hugs, and I'm just going to write out the winter. So you could use this for any time throughout winter, this card, or you could make it into a Christmas card if you wanted. I think it'd be cute to put lights on the trees or on the cabin and make this into a Christmas card, but I love the way that it looks just as a winter card. So I'm just stamping with some black ink, and then I'm going to write the word winter. I kind of wished I had written the word winter first, but I knew where I wanted the word hugs to end, so I did that first, and now I'm going to write the word winter. So I kind of want it to be straight. I'm just making sure it is. I'm drawing myself a line so that I can write the word winter straight. And then I left too much space, and it's going to drive me crazy. I was so upset with myself that I left that much space. So between the word winter and hugs, there's just a little too much space. So I thought, let's put a little heart at the end of the R, make it look intentional. So I found a tiny little black heart, and I'm going to put that at the end. And I feel like that makes it feel a lot better. Although I feel like you could, if you were planned it a little bit better than I did, you definitely wouldn't have had to put that little heart on there. So I'm taking a white Posca paint pen, and I'm going back over the lines on top of the roof of the cabin just to make them a little bit more bright white. The white is coming down a little bit into the cabin, and then I felt like it was missing something, and I realized it needed a chimney. There's got to be a fire in that cabin, so I just added a dark chimney with the watercolors, and then I'm adding some smoke just by kind of tapping in some gray lightly and coming up from the chimney, and I think that ended up looking cute. And then I'm putting a tiny bit of white paint on top of the chimney so it looks like it also got a little bit of snow. And there is the chimney. So I think that looks really cute. And I'm going to glue that heart down a little bit better. It felt like it was coming up a little bit, so I'm just going to glue it down. There we go. And now my card is nearly finished. So what I'm going to do is just trim off a little bit on the sides so that I can mount this on a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card. And I made the card out of the same watercolor paper that I used for the background. And that is, I believe I used Canson 140 pound cold press watercolor paper. I'm popping the whole thing up on some white foam, and I'm putting that a huge panel of it right behind the whole card front. And then I'm going to put some liquid adhesive and glue that down to my background. I'm just spreading the liquid adhesive. Sorry, the color on my camera keeps changing because of the white. The white balance was off. Anyway, after I put this onto my background, I'm just going to set a heavy block on top of it for it to dry, and that finishes the card. I hope that you've enjoyed. I hope that you give something like this a try. It really is super easy, and I know that you could do it if you wanted to try that. So thanks so much for watching. I'm glad to be an Altenew guest designer, and be sure to head over to altenew.com for more. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon.